And it from three. Hull comes soaring in again. This uncanny knack. That passes in.
Is on the upper left wing. Just got inside. Circles around. Pure.
Game 3 wasn't basketball. It was robbery in plain sight. The Indiana Fever were leading, battling, and in control until a wave of whistles ripped the game from their hands. Suddenly, the Las Vegas Aces lived at the foul line. Aya Wilson threw elbows. Aaliyah Boston couldn't even get a fair challenge recognized. Fans inside Gainbridge saw it. Social media saw it. And the box score sealed it. The Aces didn't outplay the Fever. They were gifted that win. The worst part? It buried Lexie Hull's gritty, career-defining night. Can the Fever bounce back? If you believe, comment, "Let's go Fever."
Wilson sets a screen where she extends her leg out, but of course they call the foul on Lexie Hull for A'ja Wilson's illegal screen. Then A'ja Wilson and Alyssa Smith totally foul Michaela Timpson, but there is no call. Could have took a 1-point lead going into half. Now we're up by 3 and they call a foul that isn't a foul. So we don't get calls when we're getting hit, but the Aces get a call when nobody touches anybody.
Game 3 was ugly, but let's not act like it was the first time Indiana found themselves battling two opponents at once. From the opening tip of this series, the officiating has leaned on Las Vegas like a crutch, warping the balance of competition. Everyone saw it in Game 1. Every time the Fever stood their ground defensively, bodying up and contesting cleanly, the possession ended with the Aces at the free throw line. Meanwhile, Indiana's physicality was judged by a completely different standard. That double treatment set the tone from the start. By Game 2, the pattern was impossible to ignore. The whistles kept stacking up, each one louder, each one more tilted, until the imbalance felt undeniable.
So why don't you think you were able to find any flow, and when that was the case, what are you trying to do to jumpstart things, maybe on the defense?
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm. It's about timing. It's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us from doing it.
In Game 2, the whistles never stopped. What began as minor frustrations snowballed into a constant drag on Indiana's rhythm, forcing head coach Stephanie White to call it out afterward. By Game 3, it wasn't just a trend. It was a wall the Fever couldn't climb. The breaking point came in the third quarter, when Aaliyah Boston tried to challenge a foul on Jackie Young. White signaled for review. The bench was set, but officials ignored it completely. Seconds later, Chelsea Gray drilled a three. In an instant, the arena shifted. What had been thunderous cheers turned into stunned silence as Indiana's hard-earned lead slipped away before their eyes.
A'ja Wilson is 1 for 12 as a foul is called on Boston, and that will be number 2 on Aaliyah Boston.
You saw Indiana picking up full court pressure defensively, and if you're Aaliyah Boston, that's the one spot on the floor you did not want to get a foul call.
And Stephanie White is trying to challenge it and did not call the timeout in time. Ray in the corner. Cut it!
It wasn't just the scoreboard swing. It was the statement behind it. The Fever had worked for separation, only to see it erased in seconds by whistles and another Vegas basket. Gainbridge fans erupted, arms flying as they screamed at officials who acted unfazed. Within minutes, clips of the moment went viral, complete with slow-motion breakdowns showing how the ignored challenge flipped the game on a single possession. Those same replays also exposed a reel of Aces flops, elbows, and cheap shoves, each overlooked by referees as the momentum shifted unfairly away from Indiana.
2-minute recap from last night. So A'ja Wilson pushes Howard in the back. Howard pushes her in the back. It's a foul on Howard. Look at this. Aaliyah Boston gets totally fouled by Alyssa Smith. Like, it's obvious, but no call. Then A'ja Wilson gets the call for not half as much. And then Alyssa Smith gets the call for not even getting touched. Here's a replay just to prove it to you. Yep, didn't get touched.
That's what made it feel less like oversight and more like favoritism. Aya Wilson could lower her shoulder into Boston. Defenders were knocked to the floor with no call, and wild arms were labeled defense so long as they belonged to Vegas. Meanwhile, every bit of Indiana contact was whistled like a crime. The swing wasn't talent-driven momentum. It was momentum gifted by officials wielding whistles like weapons, tilting the game's balance right into the Aces' hands.
It's a foul, practically a football check, and the Aces score. So now the Aces cut it to 2, and then A'ja Wilson sets an illegal screen, and they tie things up. And then Lexie Hull gets called for a foul for doing nothing when they just had 2 illegal screens they didn't call. All right, so this is fair. Same thing happens on the other side, but they don't call a foul for Kelsey Mitchell. So Leah Boston gets called for this foul for getting her arm grabbed, but Stephanie White can't challenge. They won't let her. That's the second time this game they didn't let her have her challenge. And then A'ja Wilson starts acting like a big baby.
For most teams, questionable calls like these would have crushed morale. But one Fever player refused to let Game 3 be defined by whistles. Lexie Hull made sure of it. How often do you see someone who wasn't even expected to be on the floor nearly change the direction of an entire playoff series? That's why Hull became the true headline. She wasn't supposed to be out there at all. After aggravating her back in Game 1, she entered Friday listed as questionable. Her practices were limited, her warm-ups looked stiff, and expectations were modest at best. Fans likely thought she'd log a few minutes to spell her teammates. Instead, Hull transformed her night into a gritty, unforgettable performance, one that will stick with Fever fans long after this series is over, regardless of what the box score shows.
Boston has the mismatch on Lloyd. Help comes. Kick out. Oh, will fire. And hit from 3. Last 2 positions inside from Indiana. Smith tied up by Hull. Then a jump ball between Smith and Hull.
Lexie Hull played through visible pain and still delivered a stat line that could have belonged to a fully healthy star. She finished with 16 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal, shooting 6 of 10 from the floor, including 3 triples that felt like lifelines whenever Vegas threatened to take control. Those threes carried even more weight, tying her with a franchise playoff record across 2 games at 8 total, a feat few would have expected from someone coming off a questionable injury report. Game 3 also marked her playoff career high with 16 points against the Aces. But it wasn't just the numbers that stood out. It was the way she earned them. Every loose ball, every scrambled rebound. Hull threw her body into plays most injured players might avoid, embodying toughness that kept Indiana alive.
On the left side of the floor, just a clear out, letting Jackie Young go to work.
Jackie Young with 17 points. Boston to the corner. Hull, catch, fire, and hit. Correct call. Evans dishes. Ray whips a pass inside. What a denial from Lexie Hull.
The Hull able to save the play.
12-point game. A little under 2.5 to go. Hull hits Indiana's first field goal of the quarter.
There were stretches where the camera caught Lexie Hull's face tightened in pain, but it didn't stop her. She boxed out frontline players, chased rebounds that should have belonged to taller aces, and dove across the hardwood to keep possessions alive. Time after time, she wrestled for boards, then somehow gathered herself to rise and hit shots. Each effort gave the Fever bursts of life, whenever the officiating seemed determined to drain them. Even as Las Vegas piled up free throws, Hull kept Indiana alive by refusing to let plays die. That relentlessness is why the crowd rallied around her. Fever fans recognized a player sacrificing everything her body.
Back to Hull, wide open 3 is good.
The floor that she wants, doesn't it?
It does. Mitchell, cutting. Here's Mitchell. Mitchell, one more. You bet.
And that's exactly what made the night feel so wrong. On the very evening when Lexie Hull delivered her best playoff performance in a Fever jersey, the conversation was hijacked by whistles that flipped the scoreboard and stole the spotlight. Hull's effort deserved to be the headline, yet controversy buried it. Maybe that's why she feels like the perfect embodiment of this Indiana squad, beaten down, doubted, but never willing to surrender. If Hull was the picture of grit, then what does it say about Las Vegas that their biggest star barely made an impact? Imagine being the face of a league, an MVP candidate, and going nearly 3 quarters without a field goal. That was A'ja Wilson in Game 3. She opened the night with a confident three-pointer, a shot that looked like it might foreshadow dominance. Instead, it became her lone highlight for most of the game. WY halftime, she was an astonishing 1 for 11 from the field. She finished 6 for 20, totaling just 13 points. A stat line that isn't just underwhelming for a 2-time MVP, but flat out rough for any starter in the WNBA. Rather than imposing her will inside, Wilson drifted outward, settling for contested jumpers and fadeaways. Visibly frustrated as Aaliyah Boston forced her into uncomfortable looks possession after possession.
Here we go. She gets a foul call with a 3-point game for, I don't know why they called that foul, but it's the 3rd quarter and they want them to win. So here we go. Ace is up by 3. They call another foul for A'ja Wilson that isn't a foul. All right, so then they call another foul on the Fever that isn't a foul. And then to end the game after it's out of control because the Fever had a 6-point lead, but they kept calling fouls, another foul for A'ja Wilson that's not a foul. Ball don't lie. A'ja missed 11 shots in a row during this game.
Despite Wilson's struggles, Vegas still walked away with the win, and that's the part that gnaws at fans. The Aces didn't need A'ja to dominate because everything else tilted in their favor. Whether it was whistles or timely contributions, someone always stepped up. Jackie Young carried the load with 25 points, knocking down momentum-swinging shots every time Indiana tried to claw back. Chelsea Gray chipped in 15, a steady mix of jumpers and crafty lay-ins whenever the offense looked stuck. Even Kelsey Plum and Kia Stokes found ways to chip in during stretches that mattered. And then there was Nafisa Smith, whose season has been a roller coaster. On this night, she shifted into making plays on both ends, extra rebounds, putbacks, hustle stops, that piled up when the Aces needed them most. So, while their supposed superstar was clanking shots, the rest of the roster strung together just enough baskets to ride officiating breaks back into control. What adds insult is how the coverage framed it. Wilson's box score screamed struggle. 13 points on 20 attempts, barely 30% shooting. Yet many outlets glossed over it. Some padded the story with mentions of her rebounds and blocks. Others turned the spotlight onto Vegas's depth. What got ignored? Why she was so ineffective. Aaliyah Boston hounded her relentlessly, denying space and forcing contested fadeaways. When a league MVP shoots 30% on 20 looks, that's not just an off night. It's elite defense, and Boston deserves the credit.
As well.
Here's Hull. Working behind Boston. Boston was open. Great fake, and Boston lays it in.